Please stop giving the ball away. Could you just stop giving the ball away, please? It's getting a bit much to do. It's bad enough doing it when it's 0-0 on the night and we're winning 2-0 on aggregate. But now that we've actually conceded a goal, you just go and do it again straight away. And it's an hour into the game almost now. So the heat or the atmosphere now is as hot as the temperature's been all night. So we wait until we're actually drained, having played an hour in this temperature, under this kind of pressure, before we have to step our game up. That's working out really well. Well done, Russell Martin. And it's John Souttar again. I mean, we let the ball bounce in the penalty spot for their goal. It bounced in the penalty. Nobody was challenged. There was nobody in the box. And the ball goes all the way over to the back post. If the guy to come in and sclaff it in with his eyebrow, and quite frankly, that seemed like the only way this team were going to, because how many times can you let a team have shots on our goal for point blank range and they keep missing? We've been so lucky that they just don't know how to put a fitba in the back of the net, but eventually they were going to manage to work out how to do it. And so immediately we start the 20 tippy-tappy wee passes run about the centre circle for kick-off, because that's the kind of football we want to play. That's the possession football we want to play. But don't get to John Souttar, because you've got him playing the left-hand side of defence. Mr. Water Buffalo haircut with your proclivity for mung bean salad and tar masalata, he's not a manager, he's a head coach. How 21st century, how advanced, how woke, how useless. We are a goal down and we're about to cave, and the first thing we do is we give the ball away straight away again. So they go down that same bit, they go down that same channel, and they whip. It's even like they're whipping the ball across the face of the 6-yard box. It's about 2 yards out. Jack Butland again rooted to his spot, doesn't seem able to move 2 yards off his line. No wonder he's making great point blank saves. That's the only kind of saves he can make, because if he doesn't come off his line at all. But it's the same. It's gone to the same back post bit, and they've just missed that. And the atmosphere is right. What's the answer? Try me on that tippy tappy pass. John Souttar was decent last season, really decent. He's been to this, but he's been stress tested here. He can't be the problem. He can be. Last season we came here twice. I mean, it wasn't Athens, the city of Athens. It was Piraeus, which is like Athens adjacent. It's the greater metropolitan area of Athens. It's a mental Greek stadium, isn't it? A big time Greek stadium. And he came there last season. We played Olympiacos. When Olympiacos were for the first time ever, a Greek team won a European trophy. It was a season before that. So we're playing the only Scottish team ever to play against a Greek European trophy holder. And we'd gone to their venue, and we got a goal down, and John Souttar was a wee bit responsible for the way we teed up the goal. But it was a great finish by the guy El Kabi, who's scoring goals for fun in Europe in his time at Olympiacos. But we equalise, and by the end of the game, we're kind of a bit peeved that we didn't need to win the game, because we were so comfortable on the nights. John Souttar was part of the team. Then he goes back there with the Scotland national team in a Nations League relegation playoff match. We get gubbed at Hampden in the second leg, but we win 1-0. Scotland, John Souttar is at the heart of a Scotland defence that keeps a clean sheet back in Piraeus, back in that neck of the woods. But here he is tonight. He's getting the ball away every 2 seconds, and he is not alone. And what's the answer for our tactical genius, new head coach? Bring on the young lad that we signed for Sheffield Wednesday for Finlay Curtis, because that's what we did last week in that work-out fight, and he scored, and the tie's over, and we're through, and it's the exact same bit. It's the exact same bit of the post, just about 2 yards below the crossbar, that right-hand post. At that goal, at that end, in this stadium. I mean, obviously, since 1994, they will have changed the actual goal frame. It'll be different, kind of woodwork, although it's still the same tubular metal actual frame. And the netting set out the same big square netting they've got there, but it's a different net, because the net tonight is green and white, whereas in 1994 it was just all white. But that's because when it's massive games that the big three in Athens and Piraeus have to play, they move it to the Olympic Stadium, because it's got a bigger capacity. So, when Olympiacos play there, it'll be red and white nets. Red and white nights. They want to be, it's a red and white night when Olympiacos play there, but they want to, the nets would be changed to red and white. And when AEK Athens play at the Olympic Stadium, they'll change the nets to kind of black and gold. But the 1994 Champions League final, when Marcel Desailly in the 58th minute, not the 60th minute, 2 minutes earlier than Gassama scored his goal tonight, when he scored into that net, it was all white, but it was the same end in the same stadium, the Olympic Stadium in Athens, and Milan wore all white, the same as we wore all white tonight. It was Milan's lucky European kit the previous season, a different Olympic Stadium. In the same final, the Champions League final, the first ever Champions League final, Milan wore the Rossoneri, the red and black stripes. They gave that a wee try. I mean, they won the 1969 European Cup final wearing the red and black stripes, but that was the only one they won when they're in black stripes at that point. So they lost 1-0 to Olympique Marseille, who couldn't beat us home and away in the Champions League group stage. Basically, it was a kind of effective semi-final we had with them. And Basile Boli, who we then signed, he scores the only goal of the game. So Milan get back into the lucky all-white kit, the lucky all-white kit that they'd won previous European Cups in at that point, and they win 4-0. And it was a Milan team that had spent the whole season in Serie A winning 1-0, 2-1 and 0-0. They conceded something like 15 goals in that Serie A campaign. We only conceded 13 league goals and won 55 at that. But they relied on Costa Curta and Baresi, the central defence. And in the semi-final of that year's Champions League, Jurgen Klinsmann, playing for Monaco, expert diver, probably the best diver ever, gets the two of them carded and sent after. They're both suspended for the final, and this defence that Milan have relied on all season, minimalist football, has just been blown to pieces. The middle of it has just been taken out of the game, and they're up against the Barcelona dream team of Johan Cruyff, Stoichkov and Romario, 50 goals each or something like that season. They're going to tear Milan to pieces. Milan would then go their all-white kit when they work out from the following season Champions League final when they lost 1-0 to Ajax in the Prater Stadium, in the Ernst Happel Stadium in Vienna. Patrick Kluivert, youngest ever scorer in the European Cup of the Champions League final. But this is 3 Champions League finals in a row. The middle one is the one where they seem most up against it, this great Milan side. And they blow them apart, they blow them away. And that's why it's my favourite ever performance by non-Rangers or non-Scotland. Favourite ever performance involving a team I don't actually support, but of course I kind of fell in love with that Milan team of that year. I was a young man at the time, that always helps. But I used to watch it like once or twice a day, that game. Then I'd watch it once or twice a week, once or twice a month. I'd probably still watch it once or twice a year. Now, the whole game or most of that game. But it's the point where Milan are 3-0 up. The start of the second half, they get the third goal. Dejan Savicevic with that massive lob from the wing, and it's game over, and Barcelona start losing it. And this whole tiki-taka, Barcelona are the keepers of gentle tiki-taka attacking football. You know, all they've ever wanted to do is play the game the beautiful way. They were vicious gets when I was growing up, vindictive, horrible, diving and just brutal, would break folks' legs as soon as look at them, and they reverted to that because it's still only 1994, and they've got a certain Pep Guardiola in the middle of the park along with Ronald Koeman. They've got Eusebio, and they just let's just start kicking these bampots. We're going to take revenge on them. We're going to kick them off the park. And Milan say, is that right? Because we've got this guy called Marcel Desailly, and we signed him because he played for Marseille against us when they beat us in last season's Champions League final in a different Olympic stadium. So we signed him, and then we took him aside for an hour a day at Milanello, the training facility, and we taught him how to pass, and now he's even better. And they just unleashed Marcel Desailly. And Donadoni, he's almost kind of bundling Donadoni out the way as well as the entire Barcelona defence, when Donadoni kind of shuffles the ball through to him at the edge of the box, Desailly, and he curls it outwards, and it comes back in to that top corner, round Andoni Zubizarreta, and it kisses the inside of the post at the exact same point. Well, the outswinger tonight from JD Gassama 2 minutes later in the game. It's on the hour mark for us tonight, but it's that same mark on the inside post that it kisses to put it in the back of the net. And I thought that was the problem for me tonight. The worry for me tonight was that I couldn't watch my favourite ever performance by a non-Rangers team, a team that I don't actually support. I couldn't watch it again without having a little in the back of my mind, because anything that happens to Rangers, Rangers are the filter through which I see all football. You know, Rangers, Scotland, the teams that you love, these are the filter through which you can experience all football. And it would be just, I would watch it back and I would still admire it, but I would immediately be like, oh, Rangers, we chucked a 2-goal lead. We chucked a 2-goal lead for the first leg to get knocked out in the Olympic Stadium in Athens. The first time we've ever played in the Olympic Stadium in Athens. And when Desailly went through and goal and he scored that goal, it was just Barcelona were like, right, that's it, that's fine. If we try to kick you, you're going to beat us. We get the message. If we try to foul you, you're going to beat us even harder. It's going to be 5, 6, 7. You know, so that's it. It's a truce, and it was the final goal in the game, and it was the final goal in the game tonight as well. We didn't win on the night, but we won the tie, and wearing the all white kit, and it goes off that inside. And I can. Now it's just augmented that beautiful memory of other teams winning in the Olympic Stadium. We didn't win, but we won the tie, and it's just absolutely good. How you doing, folks? This is your FATEC immediate post. Rangers have just become the first Scottish club to avoid defeat in the Olympic Stadium, Athens, in our very first match we've ever played there. The only Scottish team ever to progress after playing in the Olympic Stadium. Athens, the previous three teams, Hearts, Celtic, Motherwell, had all gone there also in the qualifying rounds of the Champions League. And I think it was a second leg in every occasion, and they all lost and they all went out. And Rangers become the first to progress from the Olympic Stadium, Athens, at the same time guaranteeing ourselves European competitive football, UEFA club competition up until the back end of January, practically into February. Reaction pod coming to you in association with Jersnet. Check out Jersnet live on the Jersnet YouTube channel, 9 p.m. at 9 p.m. every Friday night. That's a tautology, 9 p.m. or 9 o'clock every Friday night, and 9:30 p.m. every Sunday night. Check out Jersnet. It's brilliant. And I'm also sponsored by Going to the Game. Make sure you go to the game, and if you can't go to the game, watch the game. I'm sponsored by Going to the Game or watch the game. Your team is playing. Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it. Because I mentioned, I'm not going to go on about it. There's other things to talk about, obviously, but I mentioned this in Sunday when I did my post-match reaction pod to the game that had been played on Saturday. Rangers pre-season friendly with Middlesbrough drawn 2-2 at Ibrox, and I was quite upfront about the fact I hadn't gone. It was the first time I hadn't gone to a Rangers home game since April 2024. And that was because of my 25th wedding anniversary. I was in Tennessee at the time, and it turned out I missed the game that I missed was the 3-each draw with Celtic at Ibrox, which was pretty damn exciting. So, yeah, I missed that. That's also the first home or Hampden Old Firm game that I've missed in the 21st century, apart from the ones during COVID, obviously, when we're all locked at the stadiums. But so that was a bit of a bugger, but ultimately didn't really cost me anything. And this, I saw every home game Rangers last season, and I thought Saturday there, I just thought, no, I'm not going to go. It's a pre-season friendly. How much can actually happen at a pre-season friendly? Well, you had mad Middlesbrough support turning up, 7,000 of them. What a great day it was! Oh God, I didn't get to see that. Didn't know that was going to happen. And then you've got all the tactical stuff that was happening in the first half. I saw them. I didn't go to the game, but neither did I go anywhere else. But I thought to watch the game for £8 on Rangers TV was a bit stupid. It seemed wrong to watch a game, to pay to view a game that I could be at in 20 minutes from my house. So I end up, because of that stupid reasoning, I don't see any of the game, but it's only a pre-season friendly, who cares? And of course we fielded a really experimental side of the fringe players, reserve players. That's what we fielded as we're starting 11, because that's what you do in pre-season friendlies. It's just a whole lot of substitutions. It's just a fitness exercise. I wasn't going to miss much. And then I saw that I ended up sitting watching the updates on my phone, on Twitter, and I was watching Sky Sports News that was doing reports from the game, and there's no centre halves in that starting 11. There's one centre half. Bailey Rice is going to play at centre half. There seems to be so many wing backs or wide players as well. Too many of them. Where are they all actually going to go? And the Rangers official website's match report after the game said that Oscar Cortez was playing in the back four. That can't be right. But I was also hearing that Bailey Rice was playing at centre half, and I saw the Rangers review Twitter page. They posted how they thought those players were going to be deployed in a 4-4-2, whereas the official Rangers website was saying it was like a 4-3-3. This can't be right. I just get really confused, and that's kind of slightly irritating. But then after the game, and you'd be drawn 2-2, obviously, a whole lot of substitutions, and they posted, Rangers TV on their YouTube channel posted 9 minutes of highlights of the game. So when I did my wee post-match reaction the next day, I watched the action. I watched the action and those 9 minutes of highlights, and I was describing the goals. I was describing the first goal that we scored, Danilo scoring it, and how Lyle Cameron had taken the ball and turned kind of deep in his own half and knocked the ball out wide. It goes over to the other wing, then it comes back, it's floated into the box, header, goal. Turned out there'd been about 22 passes before that, because I wasn't at the game. I was watching the edited highlights, and then I'm hearing today on the Rangers Review Joshua Barry talking about how Cortez was running about as a wing back. So they were playing Oscar Cortez in defence, strictly speaking. I need to know what's going on, because we seem to be in the market for signing a winger. We're all signing a winger, and nobody ever says if he's left-sided or right-sided, what kind of foot he plays with. And I still, as an old guy, I'm trying to get my head around the fact that last season I was watching Václav Černý playing the right-hand side because he's left-footed. It takes a lot for me to get my head around that, and now I don't know. All the times tonight, Panathinaikos are checking in. They're allowed to go down our left-hand sides. So it's their right-hand side. The boys are checking inside to hit the ball with their left foot into our box. Is that deliberate by us? Because we've got two right-footed players playing the two left-sided positions in our central development and our back four. But I don't really know. So go to the game and find out. You have to see it for yourself. I just missed a pre-season friendly, and it turned out I missed the most important game possible when it comes to sussing out what our new head coach is trying to do. But the one thing that's beyond doubt that he has done is he's got us into the next round of the UEFA Champions League qualifying. My name is Alec Anderson. Crossing along the Knighted Ferry with the one coin for free. Whom on the wharf of Letha wait and count you to find? Not me, your brisk fond lackey to fetch and carry. The true sick-hearted slave, expect him not in the just city and free land of the grave. The wharf of Letha. The wharf of Letha, Mr. Houseman. What's that? Leith, the port of Leith that you're talking about there? Hibs are playing against Midtjylland in Europe tonight. Is that what that? So I mean, no, it's. We gubbed Midtjylland, we gubbed him, years ago in this run, this 21st century, the 2020s run of European competence, constantly playing hundreds of games in Europe each season. I'm absolutely loving it. We've done that. It's old school to us in Leith. It's no nice. It's a bitter poem, and I think maybe that's what you're talking about. But Leith, I've only ever heard Letha getting mentioned. The fella that does the whole thing about my heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute past, and Letha words had sunk. Letha words had sunk. Letha sinking towards Letha. It's the mythology, the ancient Greek mythology. Letha, you get the river Styx, and they're crossing along the Knighted Ferry. It's Charon, the ferryman, isn't it? The coin. They put the coins on dead folks' eyes because that's their fee for the ferryman to get them across the Styx, to get them. It's hell, it's Hades, it Styx as the river of forgetfulness, but you just forget about the bad stuff, or you just forget about the good stuff. I don't know what, but it's no nice. It's no nice at all, that part of the world, and it implies that. I mean, this is Keats with the stuff about Letha words had sunk, and John Keats. I mean, I've been to his grave, the Protestant cemetery in Rome. Talking last night in the preview pod. I'm sorry the preview pod was so long and so late, but talking in the preview pod about how Rangers hadn't played in the Olympic Stadium in Athens until tonight. We hadn't played in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin. We hadn't played in the Olympic Stadium in Rome. But I've been to the Protestant cemetery in Rome. John Keats, how hardcore can you possibly get? In Rome gets itself, but here lies one whose name is written water, and that's John Keats there. And he did the whole thing about beauty is truth, truth beauty, that's all you know on earth and all you need to know. The ode on a Grecian urn, and he's saying that it needs to be beautiful. It needs to be beautiful for it to be true, and for it to be true, it needs to be beautiful. And yet, what we watched tonight was brutal. It was very, very ugly, and yet I feel fantastic. I feel I feel gorgeous inside. And when I feel Rangers are gorgeous, how can that be when it was so awful, so brutal? I think because sport isn't it arts, and Keats is doing his whole thing, the ode and the Grecian urn, it's all about the classical Greek arts and their determination to make everything beautiful in the way they saw the world, and Aristotle's poetics and all that. It's all very, but it's not art. It gets close to it. It gets close to it when it's beautiful. It's an art form, isn't it? When it's beautiful, it's like football's an art form. When it's like tippy tappy passing, but when somebody lies down and dies, basically, and that's not the beauty of football. The beauty of football is getting the job done. It's having loyalty to your own supporters. It's a sport, and you've got to be sporting, and part of that is thinking, right, if we can't win this game by playing expansive open football, that's going to get us gubbed. Or if we aren't at a stage in our formation as a team to be able to play expansive open football, just do whatever we can to get through, because we've got punters paying into the door to watch us and they want to see us win all the time, and as long as we're not cheating, anyway, we'll do. And that's because otherwise, we're on the other side of this. For most of our history, Rangers have been on the other side of this for like 90% of our domestic games, 90% of our games in Scotland. You get teams that will just do anything they can to beat us, and nobody ever says, "Oh, that's terrible," that they're not just opening up and let Rangers rip them to pieces. Teams who do that, teams who start going on about your style of football isn't good enough, you should open up and try and play attacking football, they're basically telling you to lie down and die. It's a kind of painful, pathetic to listen to, disingenuous, really nasty, bitchy, awful kind of cowardice on their part. You do whatever you can to win at football. You just do. You get it done. You get the job done. It's all about getting the job. The beauty of football, the truth in football, is the result. And we've got through these two legs. Championship fans, So my name is Alec Anderson, and I'm talking to you shortly after Rangers have beaten Panathinaikos across the course of 2 legs, because we drew one each tonight. He says try to make up for the fact that he said beaten was actually a draw tonight. We've just drawn one each in the Olympic Stadium, Athens, to get ourselves through to the third qualifying round of the 2025-2026 Champions League. 3-1 in aggregate, we win that tie after winning the home leg 2-0 last Tuesday night. And at Rangers again, drawn in that part of the world. Athens beat us 2-0 there, then they came and they beat us at Ibrox, another Champions League qualifier back in 1994. Amazingly, the first time we'd ever played a Greek side in Europe. And since then, we've drawn one each. We've drawn every time we've played Panathinaikos away from home, we've drawn one each. Sometimes they come to Ibrox and win, sometimes they come to Ibrox and draw, sometimes they come to Ibrox and lose. But it's always one each in Athens with Panathinaikos, and we had that draw with Olympiacos last week. PAOK Salonika, we drew 0-0 in the Tomb, their famous atmosphere there, in Dick Advocat's first season in charge. So, we're doing pretty well when it comes to our record in Greece, which is always a difficult place to go. And that was hard. It was a hard watch, but it was a beautiful watch. We got there in the end. Championship fans, English League, Leeds United now out the Championship, back into the top flight, but we've been listening to them all summer. We've been listening to fans of English Championship sides, erstwhile or otherwise, all summer. Leeds United fans were telling us Parag Marath, his signings, his appointments will underwhelm you at first, but then as time goes on, they'll gradually dazzle you with how well they're working. We're on the road to that so far. We had Southampton and Swansea City fans telling us that Russell Martin's style, it takes a while to bed in. At first it can be a bit like watching paint dry and a bit shaky as well. You get dispossessed, you'll concede a lot of goals, but this tippy-tappy passing the ball about seems a bit pointless for a few months, perhaps. But eventually you'll see the benefit, you see what he's trying to do, and it will start to bear fruit. Maybe we're ahead of schedule on that one. And with Sheffield Wednesday fans telling us that the young lad Gassama is a steal for anything less than 15 to 20 million pounds, and he's absolutely brilliant. Spot on. That's happened. That's already happened. He's played twice for us off the bench in competitive football, and he's scored both times goals that are worth a hell of a lot of money, and probably the amount of money that we actually paid for him. So we're looking good. The Russell Martin, he's only had 2 competitive matches, and I think what would have happened here, Russell Martin is talking in his press conference last night before the game, and he was saying, people are talking about, are you going to try and defend the 2-goal leads? Basically asking him, are you going to sit deep? Are you going to just swallow your principles there, Russell? And he was saying, well, we try to focus on negatives that we can gain positives we can gain rather than negatives we can avoid. I'm paraphrasing, but it was along those lines. What he's trying to say is we're going to try and go out there and score more goals, extend our lead in the tie, rather than worry about if Panathinaikos can cancel out the 2 goals that we scored at Ibrox. Didn't really work out that way, but we certainly seem to be trying to get out our box. We're just completely incompetent at doing it, completely unable to get out our own half for most of that game. But that thing of not focusing on the negatives, focusing on that's not what would happen to Russell Martin if we'd gone out. There's plenty of Rangers fans have already decided Russell Martin isn't the man for the job. Plenty of aspects to both legs against Panathinaikos that will have failed to convince them, but will seem like evidence to support their case, despite the fact that it progressed. But they would start saying, well, Philippe Clement get knocked out the next round of the Champions League last year. Oh yeah, they would. There would be people saying that. That would become a thing. Clement's Rangers dropped straight into the third qualifying round last season. And they didn't have to play this round of European competition that Russell Martin's Rangers have found themselves in. But nonetheless, I think what he's done is he has avoided a negative. As far as these Rangers fans are concerned, that it's not a positive tonight. He's still got a lot to prove. He's still got more to prove than anything else. But at least he has avoided that negative of people being able to say, well, we've got knocked out an earlier round of the Champions League than we got knocked out last season. So these things, they count in a way, maybe subconscious, we don't think about it, but it's a negative avoided. At the very least, I feel it's a massively positive night. It was a painful kind of night to watch. The thing about Olympic stadiums, I was talking in the preview pod, the overly long preview pod. This is going to be a really snappy post-match reaction pod. But I was talking in the overly long and overly late posted preview pod about Olympic stadiums. I've got a fascination with venues that have hosted the final of the European Cup or the Champions League, as it is now known. You don't have to be Freud to work out why. But I was missing it for the fact that the Ataturk Stadium, Istanbul, that was an Olympic stadium. That was supposed to be an Olympic stadium, like La Cartuja in Seville, which hasn't hosted the Champions League final, but it was supposed to be as part of an Olympic bid, a bid to host the Olympics, which failed. Didn't get the game. So I suppose you could say it's an Olympic-sized stadium, an Olympic-type venue, the Ataturk. Anyway, we haven't played there either. We haven't played competitive football there. That's another venue we haven't played in. But the thing about Olympic stadiums is they've got tracks. They've got a track round them. And there was, I think I just saw the crowd was only like 36,000, and it holds double that, almost, the Olympic Stadium in Athens. But it seemed to be making plenty of noise. But they have tracks, and I didn't realise until I was rereading the bit on the Athens Olympic Stadium in Simon Inglis's the Football Grounds of Europe, the stadium guru Simon Inglis, who's fascinated with Archibald Leitch and therefore the main stand at Ibrox, where my season ticket is. But he talks about how the Olympic Stadium in Athens is obviously the Olympic Stadium because Mount Olympus is where they get the name Olympics. The Olympics were played in Athens. They took part in Athens for 776 BC. They first took place. The first Olympiad was held in Athens, and there was only one sport. There was only one event, and it was the running up and down, or running a race along this track that was about 600 feet long. And that's the track that they've got in. I don't know if for Rangers fans that have been there, been over to Athens, it's the Panathinaikos Stadium, which is a kind of rebuilding, a remodelling of the original from back in the day, from back in antiquity, of the first Olympic Stadium in Athens. And they have it now for ceremonials and concerts. When Greece won Euro 2004, they took the trophy there. And I think it used to hold about 70,000 or something, the same capacity as the modern Olympic Stadium, which wasn't built until like 1980, 1982. But it's just really thin. You can't have a sport, you can't have football there or anything. The reason it's so thin is because it was all built around the only sport they would have in the old Olympics, which was running up a race up this 600-metre track. And 600 feet, I think. And that distance, 600 feet, was called a stadion. It was a measurement. And then stadion, the name extended, it became over time that race, the sprint up the 600-foot-long track. That was the stadion, that was the event. It was called the stadion, that race. And then eventually stadion, which becomes stadium, became the word applied to the arena in which that event took place. And that's where we get the modern stadium. But there's a track around it, and it slightly dilutes the atmosphere, maybe makes it a bit less intimidating, I would imagine. And when JD Gassama celebrating his goal tonight, and I celebrated the goal, and similarly, I should have got booked for that celebration. There's a real nastiness. I think it's the way Rangers had been playing, and then Panathinaikos starting to dive, and I was watching it in BBC Scotland Sports, seeing their coverage was awful, unbelievably negative, and to be honest, Rangers weren't doing a lot to kind of counter the negativity we're getting from. But we know our relationship with BBC Scotland, with sports scene and all that. I just felt I did say something really kind of anti-Greek and slightly sexist as well when I was when we scored that goal, when I went in off that beautiful bit of Marcel Desailly post. And JD Gassama seemed to do the same thing. I don't know if he maybe got a bit of abuse when he was being subbed or whatever. I'd just been listening to the Panathinaikos fans all night, sitting on the bench, and decided he'd had enough. He'd just get it rinnies. But he's celebrating. He's actually jumping the advertising hoardings, and then the next set of advertising hoardings, and getting right up there towards the home end, the Panathinaikos fans. And then he comes back onto the pitch, but turns round on the byline and gives him another, can you hear you? Can you that shut you up, didn't it? And it's just. Fair dues, wee man. He has got the attitude, and I think maybe the track. There's a moat apparently between the seats and the track round the Olympic Stadium. But it was quite a celebration, and it's just the kind of reaction we absolutely needed tonight, because we looked really under pressure the whole game. We looked weak. We looked kind of disparate. We looked as if we hadn't played very often together, and very often under this kind of system that Russell Martin's want to employ. The players seem to be trying to react. Like last season's Rangers, I think, wouldn't have had a problem with this fixture. And this season's Rangers, in the end, did absolutely fine as well. They won the thing, they progressed. but we're really good away from home in Europe last season, the past few seasons. We got some cracking performances away from home. We looked quite confident away from home, playing on the counter-attack, and it really suited us. Some fantastic results. Tonight we looked like natural instincts were beat. It was like a counterintuitive performance from the players, and it was causing them to stumble. They couldn't complete passes. Now, John Souttar, his first kind of comments, he did a brief interview on Sports Scene at the end of the game, just saying the heat's unbelievable. And we've been hearing that from the commentary team as well. And everybody who's anybody is telling you that it's roasting in Athens. And today I was hearing, I saw a thing on Sky Sports News about Australian cricket and Indian cricket is really suffering because their players are passing out with the heat and global warming and a summer sport in these parts of the world. And Greece has always been a hot place. So years of global warming have made it even hotter. So to be playing there in July, even though it was at 9 o'clock at night, local time, it's maybe frying the Rangers players' brains. That's one of the first things that happens when you're under pressure from the elements, is your cognitive abilities start to depreciate. So we can maybe put it all down to that, but we looked like we were trying to could we just play in the counter-attack, we just lump it and then chase after it and stuff. But no, the new head coach wants us to play a different way, and they were getting confused and they were getting dispossessed constantly. The start of the game, it looked like there was a mass. It's a bit like a Hampden job for Panathinaikos. It's not their home stadium. It's a bigger stadium. Hampden's barely is about 1,000 seats more than Ibrox these days. But it's a bit like when we played Dynamo Kiev last season. There was big blocks of the stadium were full, but there was also big, massive sections that were empty. So I was stuck watching as Rangers come into the park wearing that all white kit, but with the red and blue kind of breastplates. I was like, that's a sensational kit, and I was sitting there before the game with the pennant, the wee club pennant, doing the team group photograph. It looked cool as in. That was the only cool thing we could see. But I was partly scared by the fact that Panathinaikos were filling what would be the north stand as far as you're concerned. It's like Valencia Airport, that massive roof they've got is amazing looking since they've added the roof to it. A phenomenal architectural feat. But I was getting kind of worried by the size of the crowds opposite the cameras, and then feeling a bit kind of happier when I saw there was a few empty seats, and I was remembering the game I watched and the highlights of the Conference League last season. The round they get put out by Fiorentina in the Conference League, I think it was last 16, but they went 2-0 up really early in that game because the crowd were right behind them. And I thought, we need to watch ourselves. They don't get it. It ended up Fiorentina, had equalised before half time. They'd brought it back to 2 each, but I thought, I don't know if we're capable of doing that just now if we let our 2-goal lead from the first leg go right out the window straight away. So I was worried how we were going to start. And in the first minute, I think we went up towards the edge of their box, might even have got in their box slightly in the first minute, and then that was that. That was that until the water break in like 26 minutes, which I don't know about you, but I didn't use it to get any water. I used it to, my waters broke basically in the water break. The sphincter had been really, really tight for the first 26 minutes, and it was not enjoyable. But the starting 11 was exactly the same as last week's starting 11. Big Phil, who's a regular on the pods, always sends in great posts as well that are always appreciated. He was saying to me the day in the preview pod, I think it's going to be the same starting 11 as last week. And of course, I'd rambled on so much in that pod as well that I forgot to mention what I thought the lineup was going to be. And I felt as if last night when Martin was talking, he was asked about Cyriel Seals, is he capable of starting? And Gassama, is he capable? Well, they started the friendly against Middlesbrough, so it seemed really definite. He almost said, so they're absolutely starting tomorrow night in the Olympic Stadium, Athens. I thought, that's a bit too positive. Is that mind games? So it's his first European tie as a player or a manager, Russell Martin, and he's get straight in there and he's won with a bit of the mind games because they were on the bench, the two of them, Dessers and Gassama. It was the exact same starting 11 as last week, which meant we had he's wearing number 3, but he is a right-sided player. With Max Aarons playing at left back, and with John Souttar, a right-sided centre half, playing left centre half. And he's played there before alongside Connor Goldson as John Souttar, but to have the two of them, half your defence playing that way is not good. I think within the first 4 minutes we'd conceded 3 corners. We got out of our half about 3 times before the water break, and I think in that first kind of 26 minutes, the 2 best players for Rangers were 2 guys that we thought wouldn't even be there. The 2 Englishmen or 2 of the Englishmen we thought wouldn't even be here this season, Jack Butland, and I actually thought Kieran Dowell played really well in that first half. He was one of the few guys who was kind of stopping them. he seemed to have the energy to backtrack and make tackles and kind of try and break up their constant waves of attacks. And it's a bit, Robert Duval, Consigliere Tom Hagen. It's a bit the nod from Salozzo. My compliments, for finding out that it's actually the Italians that are backing Salozzo's bid to get into the Five Families territory and selling drugs in the Goffit, because their manager has obviously, that's Souttar plays. He's played here twice last season. Souttar, I'm sure he played on the other side, and that boy Aarons, I'm sure he plays the right hand side as well. Just that number 3 is no fooling me. So not only were they pressuring the two guys who were playing out of position, as they did last week in the first leg at Ibrox, but they were trying to hit the ball between them as well. It was the inside forward channels, as an old guy like me would call them. Not quite out in the wing, but it was more kind of level with the end lines of the 18-yard box. All the way, they were just crossing. The minute they got the ball wide in the kind of inside forward channels, they were just swinging the ball into our box, to the back of the box, to the middle of the box, to the edge of the box, and we were all over the place. Max Aarons, he kind of fell on his arse at one point. They were through in goal. Great save from Jack Butland, who stood up well with a couple of cracking saves, the same as he did in the first leg last week. Jack Butland was on the telly, he's on Sky Sports yesterday, talking about how he had no intention of leaving Rangers. A lot of people would expect him just to give up and move on, or Rangers to sell him, and I did. I expected that, but he's done really well. He's a really major factor. Maybe the major factor in how we've progressed in this tie, Jack Butland. So it's comeback stuff from him, comeback stuff from the big man. And I have to, eat humble pie. I thought it was all over for him. So he was tremendous. He's been tremendous in this tie, and he was keeping, because they hit a ball in between Souttar and Aarons, and John Souttar's no close enough to it, so he kind of leaves it for Max Aarons, who's then no close enough to it either. He's got to really backpedal, and he gets dispossessed while falling on his backside, and it wasn't good at all. We seemed unable to clear the ball. I feel as if they were winning every single header, but they weren't. It's that thing in football where if you put them under pressure, if you got up there and challenge them physically, they might get their head to the ball. But they can't get the purchase, as Jock Brown used to say, using the descriptive phraseology. They couldn't get the purchase to get the headers on target, but also they couldn't get the ball on target because they are shite at shooting, as they were last week, as they were again this week. Panathinaikos don't know how to get the ball on target, and thank God. They were blasting it over the bar or putting it straight into the goalkeeper's hands, or just sclaffing it completely. Any time they went through on goal, I've never seen a team finishing as badly. You might say there's certain games Rangers you felt were finishing like that, but we did get away with it in that sense. We kept giving them chances. It was very, very uncomfortable viewing. After the water break, it was like 27 minutes. We almost gave them a goal. 29th minute, we got our first corner of the game, won by Finlay Curtis, and we did nothing with it. Our corners all night, I felt as if were almost as dangerous as Panathinaikos attacks. They would end up attacking us, but yes, we had more players up the park. It was worrying. Souttar had that challenge where the ball kind of bounced up, and he let it bounce, and then he goes up with the fella, and the ball hits off his arm, and it's not a penalty, but it's that kind of, on this kind of, if the referee was weaker, or we know what VAR officials can be like, it could have been a penalty. But this is what we're warned about by podders. This is what we're warned about by all those English podders, that Russell Martin, they start slowly. Russell Martin team's getting into his way of playing, and it certainly was. It wasn't helped by the Liam McLeod soundtrack, the commentary from 2-0's a funny lead, isn't it? 2-0's a kind of a funny lead, and it could be a long night for Rangers. And then somehow he starts talking about Dundee United, managed to get Pedro Caixinha into it as well, because they're playing a team for Luxembourg, and Stephen Thompson, who I have seen. Stephen Thompson, I was there. I was in the old Hellenic Stadium where he scored against Media Bratislava, his only goal in the Champions League proper in the group stage. Stephen Thompson, I was there that night when he scored that goal, and then there was Peter Lovenkrantz in the studio, and I was in plenty of times. I was at the game where he scores against Inter the night we actually progressed from the Champions League group for the only time in our history. I was in the game in Villarreal where he scores in Villarreal. We drew one each other there, eventually going out in the last 16 the Champions League, and then there was the one and only Andy, that guy, the Andy Halliday. He's in the studio as well, and he had that fantastic performance in Maribor, which was the same kind of tension that night as we're trying to get through to the playoff rounds in the Europa League. In Stephen Gerrard's first season, Stephen Gerrard said he was proud of Andy Halliday's performance, midfield performance. That was fantastic, getting that extra mile out of Andy Halliday up until we eventually get better players in to replace him. But this was guys who'd all done the business in Europe for Rangers, and they were all being unbelievably negative about how Rangers were playing. This just isn't good enough. He's going to have to change this, going to have to change that. But I think have you heard a podcast or watched a podcast about how long it's going to take Russell Martin to get this Rangers team going? And if you can win these games playing badly, then that'll do for me. Towards half time, I think Panathinaikos were starting to get a wee bit frustrated that they hadn't put away any of their chances, and they started they were doing it constantly. They kind of dropping to the deck and making sure when you drop to the deck, you hold your face. It's unbelievable. It's just you're being naive, Alec, and all that, but it's sport. That is sport. Cheating bastards. I mean, they're dropping to the deck, and it's like you see the action replay. The kind of hand touches the guy's chin. But I mean, at least go to the deck, clutching your chin as if you've had your jaw broken. But no, it's just a hand to the face. He's broken my nose. He's poked my eyes. They were doing all that, trying to get his kind of sense of civilization, my arse. But it wasn't working. They were targeting Joe Rothwell as well as we come off the park at half time. I think their manager will obviously have said he was the guy. For me, he ran the show for us last Tuesday night, and I think they know that, so they're trying to target him, trying to make sure he gets sent off. He goes in with a normal challenge for a ball which involved his arm going across the guy's neck, and he's hitting the deck and then trying to pick a fight with Rothwell, hoping to get him booked, hoping to get him sent off. But I think if they spent more time concentrating on their finishing rather than how to get opposition players sent off, they would have had a chance of going through in this one. The second half, no changes. It made you realise how much confidence you'd actually lost in Jack Butland, because I think a few of his saves he made in the first half were pretty standard. But the amount he let go under him or let spin into the net last season, you were kind of, oh, that's good. That a bit more upset than you should have been. But then he was making actually really decent point blank saves to keep us in the game. So we go in level. As per last week, we've started slowly. We can't put passes together. We're losing the ball really easily. Their finishing's terrible, and somehow we're going in the tunnel 0-0 at half time. And we come out in the second half, and Nico Raskin, within about 30 seconds, takes the ball on the left hand side, and it goes out for a shy, and he goes just off the park, and then he hits the deck. As if at first I thought, oh, a hamstring's gone, that's it. And it's an Achilles, that's him done. Nico Raskin's out for 6 months, fantastic. But then he got up, and I kind of, oh, that was sore. Like, it obviously wasn't sort of way, and I thought, oh, is this the dark arts? Is Russell Martin's attitude at halftime? Is this team talk being, I was on with Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football after I get sacked by Southampton, and I said the only thing I should have really have done different was employ the dark arts anytime we were under pressure, anytime we lost possession. So could you start doing that? That's my answer to how we're going to improve in the second half, because it didn't work. It didn't work straight away. They were, I think they got a penalty about 2 seconds later, and James Tavernier kind of went into the ball, and his stud touched the guy's foot, so he hits the deck, and then they were diving for a penalty straight after that, but somehow not getting booked. And any idea that we're going to out-cynic Panathinaikos went right out the window within about 2 minutes of us trying to do the kind of cynical stuff. In the 54th minute, they scored, and it was, I think the guy meant it. I've got to be honest, I see the finish. When you see it really close up, that proper close up when it shows you his head going one way and the ball hitting off the other side of his head, okay, I give it. It looks like he didn't mean it, but it's very reminiscent of Ali McCoist's goal against Dynamo Kiev at Ibrox. He does the exact same thing. This is back in 1987, but watch it. It's on YouTube. A great night. A night we did beat Dynamo Kiev early doors in the season in the European Cup, and Ali does it. It's like the header, the way he uses his head doesn't seem to match the way the ball actually travels off his head into the net. It's a much simpler kind of look than maybe it's just because that he had that the mullet perm back in the day that made it look a bit more weird. But I feel as if I've seen that finish plenty of times in football, and it was the way to do it. It was the way to put the ball in the back of the net. But again, we've let somebody go down that. Their inside right channel, our left hand side, and they've checked back, and they've floated the ball in with the left foot from their right side, and it just bounced in the penalty spot. and he goes right with it back. Now, we see in the action replay, it was a kind of 4-minute VAR check before it was decided that the guy actually was onside. The finish involves Jack Butland coming out and just standing tall at his back post as this fella goes in. Duricic, I think he meant it. It just looked like he's knocking it back across its own momentum, the ball, and it's the only way to get the ball past Butland. And Butland even then checks back and kind of scrambles, ends up falling into the back of his net as he's tried to get rid. He gets a touch on the ball, but it's too late, and the ball crawls into the faraway bottom corner. And then there's this massive VAR check because it looks offside. But I think he actually meant it. I think it's a really good finish. But it exposed how look along the line, always look along the line, how a defence, at first it looks as if he's a mile offside until you see the action in the VAR still, the check that it's I think it's Nasser Giga and Max Aarons, I think are both playing him on. But as far as they're concerned, because they're over the other side of the park, as far as they're concerned, there's one guy that's kind of near them. He's actually kind of stood kind of in between them, and they've moved up on him, so they've left him in an offside position. But he's so far, the ball's gone to the opposite side of the park, it's gone to the opposite side of the box, so he's not interfering with play. And Kieran Dowell, as far as Kieran Dowell's concerned, Duricic is miles away from him, so it's nothing to do with him. Kieran Dowell, who did give the ball away to let them in with a chance in injury time in the first half, and then was just went back to being really quiet in the second half, but he wasn't alone in that. But I think he did well in the first half, Kieran Dowell, but he lets the fella go because as far as he's concerned, the guy's offside. But for me, it's Aarons and Giga just aren't looking along the line. They aren't looking along the line. They let the ball. And I don't know if we should be if Jack Butland should be coming off his line. The ball bounces on the penalty spot, and I don't know if that's maybe something. I'm not trying to kind of back up my opinion about Jack Butland last season. Suddenly picking faults in his game winning, his match winning performance tonight, but that's maybe a factor. But our response instantly was Curtis. Finlay Curtis gets taken off, and on comes JD Gassama again, as he did last week. He goes on to the left-hand side, and we had that one attack, as I was saying, or one attempt at attacking, which resulted in them breaking on us again, and the ball flashing across our box, and anybody gets a touch on it, they're all sliding in at the back post, the Panathinaikos players, and they couldn't quite get a touch on it. That would have been 2-0 instantly, and it's just, we've collapsed in the space of 2 minutes, and in that heat, and the way we've been playing all night with zero momentum, it would have, I think that would have been it. Instead, we then go up the park, and they're still showing the coverage is still showing you. I'm watching the BBC Scotland. The coverage is still showing you a still of the VAR decision, which took so long for them to arrive at. And then it cuts away, and Nico Raskin is piling down the kind of inside left channel. He goes into the box, he beats one guy, or he feints one way, and he goes to feint the other. The guy gets a foot in, it spins back, and Danilo, who you forgot was on the park, he does really well. He collects the ball, takes it back towards Raskin, and kind of spins round, and he has a shot with his left foot, comes back off a defender, a shot with his right foot, comes back off the goalie, and it bounces out kind of towards the penalty spot. It spoons out off the goalie's kind of legs, and it takes a bounce, and JD Gassama, who's been on the park for literally a minute, just walks up there and adjusts his foot. He's coming down kind of the left-hand side of the box, but he adjusts onto his right, and he fires this thing, just volleys it first time, and it spins away. The box is still packed with players, and it just spins away, and that thing's getting in. And it did. It went right off the Marcel Desailly spot, the post, and it goes. And it's such a flipping relief to respond instantly like that. Deflated them straight away. The timing of that goal, and you can therefore say the timing of the decision to bring on Gassama by the manager was genius and tie-saving, life-saving on the night. It extinguished their energy as soon as they felt it. And that's doubly gutting in many ways, to just get a taste of what it's like to go in front before you could build up any momentum. It's been sucked straight back out you. It's worse than if it had still been 0-0 on the night. So that was it was perfection, and it's still. I mean, the game wasn't over. We still were contriving to give the ball away and letting them go through on goal. As I say, Gassama was booked for his celebration, so he's instantly on a yellow card, and straight away he's pulling at a guy's shorts, and you're thinking, the way these fellas react, the cynicism of the Panathinaikos players, we're going to go straight down to 10 men, and in this heat, 10 men, in that kind of heat, at that point in the game, the energy we'd already put in, it'd be another kind of 20 minutes to play, it would have been really, really dodgy. I wouldn't have seen us surviving that, to be quite honest with you, but it didn't happen, and on we went. I think we substituted, we brought in Hefty for Kieran Dowell, about 74 minutes. I'm assuming Max Aarons then went wide right up front, because Hefty goes into left back, and Tav stayed at right back. I'm assuming Max Aarons went, but I never saw him again for the rest. I don't remember seeing him on screen or anything for the rest of the game. Probably just as well because I had a bit of a nightmare tonight, Max Aarons. He's been played out of position. Too early to call it on that young fella. And then we had the 82nd minute. Dessers comes on for Danilo, straight swap, and Bajrami come on for Rothwell. And I think Bajrami then went into wide left, the wide left 8 position, with Diomande playing the wide right, or kind of the right hand side 8 position, and I think Raskin then goes into 6. I think that's probably what happened there. But I was far too frantic in watching it through my fingers to tell you properly. And I think at that point, with like 8 minutes to go of normal time, and us bringing on a few extra fresh legs, Panathinaikos started slowing a bit. It has to be roasting for them as well, even though they're acclimatised, they're living in those conditions. They normally play in that heat. There comes a point where it's just really warm, no matter where you're from, and it's hard to play in that kind of heat. So, Tav takes a corner. I think with about 5 minutes to go, and it's with the steady cam. The coverage, it's a guy with the steady cam, and he goes right down to Tav with the armband and the all white kit. And it was Tav, he's got the pennant at the beginning. The pennant. I remember when we played Porto the first time in the Champions League group stages, I went over to that game at Dragao, what was that, 2005? And during the day I went to Boa Vista's ground, not Dobessa, and they got a wee stadium tour for a guy in the pub next to it. There's a wee bar in the bottom of their main stands, and this guy comes out, just a local worthy, and he does tours for folk, and he just gets like a few euros off them, so he takes you in, he's got the keys and all that, because it just puts on the lights in their wee trophy room and all that. It was great. And I just saw the pennant, and I was at the game at Ibrox. I think it was only the second or third European game I'd ever been at, where we played the Boa Vista at Ibrox back in 86-87 under Sunis in the UEFA Cup. And then we beat them 1-0. We beat them 2-1 at Ibrox. We beat them 1-0 over there, Derek Ferguson. I wasn't at the game, but there was our pennant, and it's all the pennants. This wall is of all the pennants of all their European opponents, and probably a few Portuguese opponents as well. And it's funny, it's your team. It just stood out a mile straight away, that kind of connection. So it was lovely seeing the pennant tonight. It'll be the third pennant that Panathinaikos have got from Rangers, and although I expect sporting-wise they will have that pennant up there. I'm thinking every time they see it, they'll be thinking, Christ, we could just never, doesn't matter what we do, we could just never beat the Bampots when they come over to Athens. But there was Tav with the armband on, the all-white kit, and he's just looking absolutely phenomenal, looking like a total dude, because the camera's down and it's looking up at him, and he's got the whole sweep of the Panathinaikos end of the Olympic Stadium, Athens, looking like a total boss. And I'm thinking, this is it, here we go. And they put the corner straight out the other side. It was, and then Cyriel Dessers in the second of the 5 minutes of injury time. It's Italian officials, so thank goodness they weren't going to let Panathinaikos away with anything. They see that stuff week in, week out. But the ball gets played through Cyriel Dessers. He's going through on goal, and the Marcel Desailly slot from the 1994 Champions League final where he scored his goal, and I thought, just curl it that same spot, just go for it, Cyriel. And I thought we're maybe not going to lose this game, become the first Scottish team not to lose at this venue. Let's be the first Scottish team to win here, to win at the Olympic Stadium, straight into the goalkeeper. I mean, it bounced off the goalkeeper and nobody was following up, but it's like, Cyril's back, here we go. And I was waiting for the headline. I mean, the headline, Dessers writes Cyrillic script, the Cyrillic alphabet, and it was just somebody that's good at that kind of stuff would have made a proper headline out of that. But Cyril in the Cyrillic, in the land of the Cyrillic alphabet, it would have been. It was a headline writer's dream, and you're thinking, oh God, Cyril, here we go, you're missing these chances again. And then about a minute later, he chases a lost cause to win as a shy out of nothing really, and just help us become the first Scottish club to avoid defeat in the Olympic Stadium Athens, because it's not all pretty. It's not all pretty. You get the hard yards. You've got to run those hard yards. In that kind of heat, ode on a Grecian urn as a Grecian burn tonight, and Rangers get through it. Prometheus, Mount Olympus, the forge, the blacksmith for the gods, Prometheus. So that's Hephaestus making the shield for Achilles, and it needs to be a white hot forge, and I think that's how you put stuff together. The Rangers shield isn't quite ready yet, but it needs to get forged, stress tested like hell tonight. This is how you get a team together coming through these kind of massive tests, and we're now going to play Viktoria Plzen next Tuesday or Wednesday at Ibrox. And it's unrelenting at this time of the season. We're going to play Viktoria Plzen. The Skoda Plzen are coming to Ibrox in the third qualifying round of the Champions League, and that's. I looked at the stats of their game against Servette, and although they lost at home to Servette had about 30% possession or something like that. And I thought I think that it's probably like a Rangers type scenario where from last season we preferred going away from home, and a bit of an epic I think in Geneva tonight. But Viktoria Plzen scored late on. I think it was a red card for both sides, but they scored late on to win the tie by the odd goal. So it's Viktoria Plzen rather than Servette that we're playing. It means we don't have to face up to Shakhtar Donetsk or Besiktas in the next round of the Europa League, which would have been better for me because that's an Anorak hit. I've seen Servette before and Viktoria Plzen. I've never been in a European final or anything like that. So, but it's nice. I've never seen them before, Viktoria Plzen, so that'll be fairly interesting. But it's very winnable. It's a very winnable tie. I think Plzen finished about 13 or 15 points off the. Finished second last season in the Czech League to Slavia Prague, but the furthest they've ever been in Europe. I think they only played once in Europe in the 20th century, Viktoria Plzen, and that was the first round of the 71-72 Cup Winners' Cup, and it was against Bayern, who we had probably our greatest ever result in European competition. It was against Bayern when they got to the semi-finals. That's it. And they got no further than the semi-finals in 71-72, and the Cup Winners' Cup did Bayern, but they beat Viktoria Plzen in the early rounds of that one, and the rest of it, Viktoria Plzen weren't a European regular. They weren't even called Viktoria Plzen. They were called Skoda Plzen for so long. And then in the 21st century, they've been kind of regulars in group stage football in all the competitions. Last 16, they've been in the last 16s of, they get put out the last 16, I think, of the Conference League last season. Was it? Maybe the Europa League. They were in the Olympic Stadium in Rome anyway. I know they visited there last season, somewhere we've never played. And they got to the quarterfinals of the Conference League, I think the season before last, and they lost to Fiorentina, who got through to the final. So they're on a bit of form just now. Viktoria Plzen for me will always be the side who I just needed them to concede a couple more goals in the 2022-2023 Champions League group stage, and then we wouldn't have these accusations that we have the worst Champions League group stage ever. That's not true. I don't think it is. I say plenty of other teams have lost all six in the old format of the Champions League group stage. Plenty of other teams have lost all six of their group games. Viktoria Plzen did that season, and their goal difference, I think we were minus 20, and their goal difference was minus 19, and they were in a group involving Bayern. I mean, we had Ajax, Liverpool, and Napoli, and they had Bayern, Barcelona, and Inter. But I think Inter kind of eased up on them the way Italian teams tend to do, getting all pragmatic once they knew the game was won. But they didn't get a single point, and they conceded more goals than us, but they scored about 5 or 6 goals in that group stage, where we only scored 2. But if Inter and Barcelona had just went a bit more to town, as they are wont to do on Viktoria Plzen, then they would have had a worse record in all respects than us in that group stage. The same one be 2022-2023 Champions League. So they're scored. We've got revenge, a need for revenge against them. And it's a very winnable tie. If we get beat, we drop straight into the Europa League group stage. That's fine. That's our level, I think. If we beat them, you're then fit. And now don't quote me on this. I would double check this with your own sources. I think we then get either Benfica, Nice, Bruges, or Salzburg in the playoff round. And this is, Benfica, we've had 2 ties against them. We've played them 4 times, basically, twice at home, twice away, in the last 4 or 5 seasons in Europe, and there's only one of them has been a winner, and it was 1-0 to Benfica at Ibrox, and that was a really tight game as well. So we can go toe-to-toe with Benfica. We haven't lost in either of our trips to the Estadio de Luz in Europe. Nice, we gubbed them 4-1 in their own joint last season in the Europa League group stages. Bruges, we're just drawn 2 each with them at Ibrox. And a friendly, they're at a level with us. Salzburg, RB Salzburg, always get really good players. That's the Red Bull kind of headquarters, really. So they've got really good players, RB Salzburg. They're always a bit useful, but again, probably doable. It's difficult, but winnable. We could find ourselves in the Champions League group stages if we're not careful, because obviously we need the money. We need the money, the Champions League group stages. And I go on about Olympic stadiums that Rangers have played in and Rangers haven't played in. The Athens Olympic Stadium, I'm talking about the game in 1994, the Champions League final being played there, but I also remember watching HSV, watching Hamburg. Felix Magath scoring the only goal of the game at the other end in the Olympic Stadium in Athens in 1983 against Juventus, the Juventus team that had basically won the World Cup for Italy the previous year. Were expected to beat HSV hands down, and they go out there. Felix Magath scores the only goal of the game. And they win it there, and also Milan again in their all white lucky kit come back and they beat Liverpool, get a bit of revenge for Istanbul 2005 and 2007. Ancelotti's Milan beat Liverpool 2-1 in the Olympic Stadium in Athens because it's the European Cup final, and it's the European Cup, and I can't help thinking about. I'm talking about Keats. I'm talking about odes and a Grecian urn. That Grecian urn we're talking about. I mean, polish my Elgin marbles till they're really shiny, British Museum stuff and all that, but it's a Grecian urn. It's actually it's a thing they call a crater. A crater. That's one there. I don't know if you can see it. It's just behind me in the cover of Aristotle's Poetics. A two-handled vase. In fact, Keats did. I've got a postcard somewhere, but I've got it in the book here. Keats drew the Grecian urn that he wrote the poem about, and that's it there. You can see that. I'm holding that up to the screen. And the two handles, it's actually quite a bad drawing. That's Ailsa Craig next to it, by the way. I think Keats might have been in Ardrossan. He might have actually been in Ardrossan when he went down to see Burns' house in Alloway. But that's the Grecian. It's like a two-handled vase, and that's the shape of the Henri Delaunay trophy, the original Henri Delaunay trophy, and also because obviously European trophy makers would be basing their stuff on antiquity, the classics of antiquity, the classic designs. So the Henri Delaunay trophy, which has expanded in size since 2012, since 2008, and the original European Cup, were the little tiny handles either side at the top. And Celtic, when they won the European Cup in 1967, they were the first team to win the European Cup in its current shape, the Champions League trophy, the big-eared trophy with the big handles. It's a two-handled vase, and that's the one. We are not going to win the Champions League this season. This is the conundrum with the Champions League. I am obsessed with it. Rangers fans should be obsessed with it. It's something we are, along with, I would say, Everton, Atletico Madrid, and Partizan Belgrade. The club with the most kind of access to the European Cup or the Champions League, who've been in and about the final stages of it plenty of times, and have our rival, a bitter local rival, who's actually won the thing, and that really ups the ante. It's not something I need for Rangers, but I think it's something Rangers as a club, we need to be champions of Europe one day. And the kind of economic situation, the geopolitical situation is always changing, it's always fluctuating. So you never know. It's something that definitely could happen. We've got to keep ourselves going. Just now, I just need a taste. I just need a constant taste of the European Cup. We might not go any further than the next round. We might not get into the champion. We're going to drop into the group stage, whatever. I think we would be suited to the Conference League this season, but that now won't happen. Budapest, the Champions League final is in the Puskás Stadium, the old NEP Stadium in Budapest. Rangers have only played one team. We played Ferencváros in the early rounds of the 60-61 Cup Winners' Cup when we got to the final. That's the only time we've played a Hungarian club in Europe. That's quite amazing. But we've never. That's another. That'll be another Champions League final venue that Rangers haven't played at, is the old NEP Stadium. We might have played there in a friendly or whatever back in the day, but we certainly never played there competitively in Europe. So, although Ferencváros did move a lot of their games, big games in the back in the day, we obviously weren't big enough, but we pumped them out of Europe anyway. The final of the Conference League was in Leipzig, but we'll not be going back to our favourite ground in Leipzig. And this season's Europa League final is at Besiktas. So there's that little thing. We've never played Besiktas before in Europe. We've never been to that stadium competitively. It's the Athletic Club of Bilbao, who we had played before in Europe, but they were hosting the final last season, the Europa League, and we ended up playing them in the quarterfinals. You never know. Maybe that's a little sign we're due to drop back into the champ. But we should always be trying to get into the Champions League. We should always be aiming to eventually win the thing one day, to be champions of Europe one day. Celtic have done it. We want to be the best in Scotland. Never mind our local rivalry. We want to be having done everything in Scotland better, or as good as minimum, than everybody else in Scotland. So it's something we've always got to be aiming for. It's been one of the great obsessions of my life. But when you saw, like today, Bayern Munich signing Diaz from Liverpool, who Liverpool is kind of a surplus to requirements at Liverpool, and Bayern Munich are seen it as a kind of an experiment for them. They're going to have to kind of see if they can turn them into, regenerate them almost. Slightly experimental. It's not a massive transfer between two Champions League clubs. 70 million, basically £70 million, €70 million. Marath and Kavanagh bought Rangers for 75 million. So this is what we're up against. By the time you get into the group stages of the Champions League, you could take an absolute pounding. It's maybe not what you want to be happening to a team that's just getting itself together under a new head coach. But at the same time, so it's a bit of a conundrum with the Champions League. We should always be aiming for the money that we're going to get from dropping into for going into the Champions League, qualifying for the Champions League group stages would be phenomenal. But I actually dread that Celtic, I don't know if Celtic can get into the Conference League, even if they lose all their European games this season. I don't know if it's possible. I think they might be into a drop into the Europa League at worst. Europa League group stage at worst situation, the same as ourselves. They're going into Europe a round later, so I'm imagining they can't actually get into the Conference League, but it would worry me if they did. Almost, if we get into the Champions League group stages and they get into the Conference League group stages, because they could win a European trophy. Rangers and Celtic are at that level just now, I think. I know we slag Celtic for not having got past the knockout rounds, the post-group knockout round. They haven't won a post-group knockout round tie for more than 20 years, and we've been in 2 European finals and the bottom tier of Scottish football in that time. I know we kind of slag them for that, but I know they get stuffed 7-1 by Borussia Dortmund last season, but we get stuffed 7-1 by Liverpool just a few months after reaching a European final, and Celtic also drew away with Atalanta last season, who are the Europa League holders. So I think we're both at a level just now where we could win the Conference League, and I would like Rangers to be the first Scottish club to win 2 different European trophies, 2 different European competitions of any kind, and it would actually annoy me because there's no way we're winning the Champions League, but at the same time we'll worry about that anyway. The main thing is to try and beat Viktoria Plzen. You always just want to beat who's in front of you. We'll worry about that when it happens. But I just talked last night in the preview pod, and I am wrapping this up now, honestly, folks. I think the great thing, it's a work in progress for Russell Martin. He's got players playing out of position all over the park because he hasn't got in all the signings he wants to, and we can now that he's limited over these 2 games to the European squads. I think he gets to reboot that European squad with any new signings. He's unbeaten in his 2 competitive matches in charge of the club. He won the home game, he drew the away game at a difficult away European venue. That's classic. That's classic stuff. If this is as bad as it gets under him, then I think we're going to be absolutely fine. The budget, it means we can now work on budget B. I think budget D would be there's no European football at Ibrox this season. Budget C would be it's Conference League group stage football we're playing this season. Well, neither of those will happen. Budget B, it's Europa League group stage football at least, and we've got the prospect of perhaps moving on to budget A, but we can certainly probably complete a few more signings now in time for the European squads updates, get them in there and hopefully play a lot better over the 2 legs against Viktoria Plzen. It's going to be difficult enough anyway. But I was talking last night about how Panathinaikos, it's sort of, to be classy, or basically all language, the English language it's full of Greek. It's not even loan words, it just forms our language, the way language is developed. And Panathinaikos, like panorama, panoply, the pantheon, the pantheon, the Parthenon, that's different. But the prefix, you get a Greek prefix in there, and that's you. It's a proper word. We've got like polysyllable. We get players with polyglot players with polysyllabic names. And I think that our head coach, Russell Martin, this was his prefix. This was the start of his Rangers management, or his Rangers head coachment, of his career at Rangers, is a word. This was the prefix tonight, how it started against in his very first tie in charge. This was a tie that we were expecting to lose. Most of us were expecting to lose. A lot of us didn't think it was that straightforward, but we were expecting to lose this tie quite easily, and it was fantastic. We went back over to the BBC studios straight after it to find out how they could put a negative spin on a Scottish team progressing in the most important club competition in the world. Jonathan Sutherland doing the old kind of, Rangers are terrible tonight. It really looked all over the place. It was a wonderful result. But it's almost like covering his mouth as he said it was a wonderful result. There's no getting away from that. It's really good for the club. But, the love just wasn't there at all. What are the positives they can take from this? It's actually quite difficult to find a way to ask a negative question after a massively positive result for a club from the country for which your broadcasting is supposed to be funded. But nevertheless, you wouldn't want to avoid the fact that Rangers played quite poorly tonight. But I think John Souttar talking about the heat, SAS training, that's what I was telling you. Jungle training is about being able to think under pressure uncomfortably, and it helps you become an absolute warrior. And I think last week the tifo was correct. Britannia with her shield and her lion victorious over the Acropolis, but now she's going back to the Necropolis on her way to Motherwell. It's all going to start again on Saturday night. Need to get this game won so he gets a proper start in the league as well. Russell Martin, but I think this was the prefix to his Rangers career, and it's very intelligent, very noble, and it's as beautiful as I could possibly want it to be because Rangers won, and we've still got that tiny little outside chance of going all the way. But we've progressed. The main thing is we've progressed in the competition, for which there's that beautiful two-handed vase, that beautiful crater, that beautiful Grecian urn waiting at the end of it.